Sean Malstrom, after spending an entire, I don't know, 20-year span, almost 20 years, over 15, not quite 20, but almost 20 years complaining about 3D Mario, claiming that 2D Mario was superior, that Nintendo didn't respect their IP, that they didn't respect the fans, that they have no idea what they're doing, that he himself can produce a better video game without having any resources or talent or people under him or like, anything like that. Like, oh, I could do better than Nintendo. I could produce a better 2D Mario than they could. I could do this, I could do that. It hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened in the past 15 years that I've been complaining about this, but I am doing it. I can make a better game than Super Mario Bros. Wonder because I am just that talented of a creator. Like, Nintendo has just screwed the pooch so badly. There is no salvaging even like the holiest of video game genres. 2D Mario, right? Super Mario Bros. Wonder has nothing in common with traditional 2D, like with like the NES games. It's not some big epic adventure. It's just gimmicks thrown into a 2D space. Like Nintendo doesn't understand world building. They don't understand how to make their stuff cool and engaging and like fresh for a new audience. Like it's such a weird like code. It's such a weird seed because most people are pretty adamant that like Mario Bros. Wonder looks fantastic. Like there are a lot of people like who are non-fans who think the game looks mid and that like 2D Mario isn't a big deal. But those of us who play the games, who know how popular this is, who love and enjoy Mario games, not just 2D Mario, not just 3D Mario, but 2D Mario in general. Like those of us who appreciate the Mario IP understand that Mario Bros. Wonder looks phenomenal, and that like anybody who's like throwing weird allegations at it, who's like trying to find excuses not to enjoy it, just like you found excuses not to enjoy Super Mario 3D World, like new Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario Galaxy, like, Sunshine 64, like all of these great games that, have legions of dedicated fans. Nah, like all of that is worthless compared to 2D Mario because that's what I grew up with. That's what I enjoyed back in the NES days. Like Super Mario World ruined everything. There was no recovery after Super Mario World. They ruined the entire franchise. They have no idea what they're doing. It is like, probably the most peak example of like pretendo logic I've ever seen in my life. Because you're seeing a lot of people do this now with like Zelda and stuff like that, saying like the old 3D games were better, trying to talk down to Breath of the Wild. And it's just, I think it's unfair to both the old games and the new ones to kind of compare them in that fashion because the old ones paved the way for the new ones to like innovate and do new things that will in turn be like paved the way for new games to come, right? I am a fan of like every aspect of like, Mario and Zelda. Like I've played the 2D and 3D games. I've played games like The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks, like Majora's Mask, like Wind Waker, like Twilight Princess. Like I have a more well-versed knowledge and experience with these IPs than Sean Malmstrom does. And yet somehow, for some reason, just because he grew up with Super Mario Bros. 3, he thinks he's some hardcore expert, that he can just look at this trailer for Super Mario Bros. Wonder and call it disappointing. All right? Just try and call it underwhelming. Just like he tried like going after Tears of the Kingdom for like, very shallow, arbitrary reasons. Oh, I don't want to talk to big birds. Like this isn't something I can take seriously. Like where have you been for it's always been like this. Like the original Zelda had you fighting pigs. Like how is that any different? Like how is that different in any way, shape, or form? Like you spent years and years complaining about like Zelda not being open enough, and then when you finally get it, you complain about that. But like with 2D Mario, it's the same deal. Like we're at the point where like Sean Malmstrom has been completely mind broken, right? For the past several years, he has become notorious for like his assertions that Nintendo is doing everything wrong, that they won't stay successful, that like they're not doing anything to appeal to him, and yet somehow over and over and over and over and over again, they keep winning, they keep succeeding, they keep putting out stellar game after stellar game that like wow fans all over the world. Like it's if anything, they seem to be bigger than they were in the 80s, right? They are bigger than they are in the 80s. Pokemon was not a thing back then. you didn't have all these cool new IPs. Like, why exactly is 2D Mario so special, right? Like, again, it is a cultural milestone. It's a big deal, but does that invalidate all these other games? Like I've seen you go after games like Pikmin. Oh, nobody buys Pikmin. Pikmin 4 becomes the best-selling game in the franchise. Nobody buys Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem has become a major weed thing in the past several years. Complaining about like, Splatoon or this or that, or like, who cares really? Like, there are so many people who are enjoying these games, for what they are. They don't need to be like the same thing over and over again. They they can innovate. They can do new things. They can experiment. They can be completely different genres if they want. They can do this or that. Like they can be 2D or they can be 3D. Like there is no denying though that Super Mario Bros. Wonder is looking to be a great new entry in 2D Mario, right? I've made comparisons to like the Super Mario Land games, and how it has that the similar feel to it with like the new kingdom and like the enemy designs and stuff like that. Like Donkey Kong Country, like it feels as if like this is probably going to be the best 2D platformer from Nintendo since Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and that is no mean feat. Tropical Freeze was phenomenal, but have you even played Tropical Freeze? Do you know anything about it? Have you, done your research at all? Like, I've seen you talk trash about like the original Donkey Kong Country games, right? Like, it's just, it's just so bizarre how we inexplicably every single time have to deal with this nonsense where people just, no matter what happens, have to say that Nintendo is making some serious mistake and are somehow ruining their brand, right? We saw this going with Sean Malstrom going into Super Mario Bros. Wonder release, where like he was hyping up 2D Mario. Oh, Mario used to be like Alice in Wonderland. It used to be about going in some crazy new adventure. And then they announced Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which a game that literally has the term wonder in it, has the same kind of like trippy visuals as Alice in Wonderland. And then like he has to do like a 180 and do this thing where like, oh, this isn't what I meant at all. This is nothing like I wanted Mario to be like. It happens so often and so consistently with so many different franchises, Metroid, Mario, and Zelda in particular, that you really get this sense that pretendos like Sean Malmstrom will never be satisfied with anything. They are bitter old men who are fixated on a childhood that honestly probably never really existed to begin with. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a great game, right? I will never dispute that. I love the first three Super Mario Bros. Games, but like, I also love Donkey Kong. I also love, Donkey Kong Country. I also love like, Metroid and what that became by Super and like by Prime and with like, games like Dread. I grew to love newer Nintendo IPs like Star Fox, Pikmin, Pokemon. Like the list of Nintendo games I love is growing all the time because I'm always on the lookout for new interesting experiences. But like Malstrom and people like him are so stuck in the past, they really can't appreciate the things they're getting now. There is no enthusiasm whatsoever for the release of Super Mario Bros. Wonder from him or his community. And as a result of that, like, I really have to wonder, like, why are these people who are constantly attacking Nintendo, constantly criticizing them, like, upset with every single release they've ever had, like, they've made in the past 30 years, over 30 years at this point. Super Mario Bros. 3 came out in 1990. The past over 30 years, why exactly are you still so obsessed with this company? Like, is it perhaps that you actually enjoy these games and you just don't admit it? Like, why exactly are you obsessively covering these games and talking about them? Making up lies about the developers, people like Inoma, people like Miyamoto, people like Sakamoto. Like, why are you so adamant that what everything is Nintendo is doing is wrong? And this isn't a new thing. Like we've seen this happen with Tears of the Kingdom. We've seen this happen with like lots of dozens of Nintendo games over the years. I've gotten upset about this kind of thing several times. I've addressed this several times over. But like this is what Sean Malmstrom is mostly known for, and the reason I'm talking about this now is the obsession with 2D Mario and his allegation that like it's objectively superior to 3D Mario because traditionally it sold more. With no real respect for the fact that like 3D was a developing style and that they were like still trying to innovate, and like it took them a very, 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 very long time to really make the Mario 3D Mario games as popular as the 2D ones, right? We got games like Super Mario Odyssey, which do is extremely popular, right? There is no denying that. Like, why exactly do we feel as if we need to like talk down about different kinds of Mario games, like purely whether or not it's 2D or 3D? Like, it is completely ridiculous. Like, I have a preference when it comes to my Mario games, right? I do like certain games more than others, but like, I would never condemn an entire genre or an entire style of play based on like the the versions of the game I grew up with. Like I try to be a bit more objective. I try to be a bit more rational. I try to be a bit more fair, right? There is no reason why you can't respect new video games as they come out, right? There is no reason why you cannot evaluate them and respect the games and the developers and the fans for what is coming out now. Like this behavior, this downplaying of Super Mario Bros. Wonder is unacceptable. Like there is no denying at this stage that this game is going to be anything less than like great. Okay, I feel like this might be one of the best 2D Mario games ever made, and right now, like there are a lot of people who are refusing to admit this is a big deal, and Sean Malstrom is absolutely one of them.